Hello. So welcome back to my channel. My name is L'Oreal. I am a sales trainer, consultant, author, speaker, and I'm really passionate and good at teaching people how to convert more prospects to paying clients, as well as teaching high-ticket sales and how to get corporate clients. And so in this video, I really want to share 3 of the most common mistakes that I hear when I am listening to people's discovery calls or sales calls. So let me start by saying that one of my favorite things to do are sales call audits, right? So some people may call them sales calls, other people may use the term discovery calls or any other kind of like clever name that they've come up with. But essentially a sales call is a conversation that you are having with a prospect. And one of my favorite things to do are sales call audits. Now, this is where someone has recorded their sales call and they have sent it to me, and I am now going through it, looking at everything that they did well, everything that they could have improved, and making suggestions on next steps or what they need to do to get the deal moving forward or moving out. And it is absolutely one of my favorite things to do because it allows me to see what is happening in real time and not just like what they thought happened on the call. And then as a result, I'm able to give them super tailored feedback on what it is that they need to be moving forward, patterns that I notice, things that they need to switch up, and ultimately like things that they need to do to try to close the deal or close the deal out. So with that being said, I've listened to hundreds of sales calls, and there are 3 common mistakes that I see. Now, I will tell you the hardest thing about making this video was narrowing it down to like the most common 3, right? So the first thing is talking too much. Right? So a lot of times when people are thinking about selling, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to be extroverted and I've got to have big personality and I've got to convince people and I've got to show my expertise and I've got to persuade them to get them to buy. And that's actually not what selling is. Selling is really a value exchange. They have a problem that they can't solve on their own. You have a solution, and in exchange for that solution, they're going to pay you money. Or pay your company money. All right, and so selling is really a value exchange, and you cannot identify what that problem is that they cannot solve on their own if you're doing all the talking. So selling is not about pushing your product. Selling isn't about getting someone to say yes. Selling is a value exchange. In exchange for solving their problem, they're going to pay you or your company money. And so when you have that perspective, you will understand why talking so much is a bad thing, right? And so what you really want to shoot for on a sales call, especially a discovery call, is that you want to get them talking 70 to 80% of the time. Them talking means your prospect. And in order to do that, that means you have to be really good at asking questions. It means you have to know the questions to ask that's going to get them to open up and to tell you more. And you have to know how to get them talking. You need to know how to set up your call to begin with, whether that person feels comfortable sharing what's going on and what they're trying to accomplish and why they haven't been able to accomplish it on their own and how they found you and what success looks like for them and all of those other things. But the most common mistake that I see is just talking way too much. And so if they're talking 80 to 90%, 70, 80% of the time, that means that you're only talking 20 to 30% of the time, especially on an initial call. Now that's a little bit different the further you get into the process, or if you have to meet with them multiple times, then yes, you talk more when you're presenting your solution. But when you're doing discovery, you have to just be asking questions to uncover what's working, what's not working. What are they trying to accomplish? Why haven't they been able to accomplish it on their own? And the only way to do that is by asking the right questions. So that's the biggest mistake. Number 2 kind of ties into that. So one of the reasons that people end up talking too much is because they don't have a sales process. They are literally winging it. They're getting on the call, or they're walking into the office, or they're knocking on the door, whatever it might be, and they are literally like crossing their fingers and hoping it all works out, and they're winging it on the call and they're going with the flow. When in reality, like, selling is a process. And so what I mean by that is you should have a process that you can consistently follow that takes someone from prospect to paying client. You should know what you're doing before the call. You should know what you need to do in the first 5 minutes of the call. You should know what key questions it is that you want to ask. You should know what questions that they're potentially going to ask you and how you want to answer those. You need to know how you're going to transition from like discovery to presenting your offer. Let's say if you have a one call close, or setting up a next step if you have a separate proposal meeting. Like, all of that should be laid out. Right? So the second biggest mistake is not having a consistent or an effective sales process that you're using to take someone from prospect to a paying client. And so part of that process needs to be your prep work. What are you doing before the call? Are you filling out a pre-call plan? Are you mapping out what that call needs to be and like doing the work in advance? Because the amount of work that you have to do on the back end to try to close the deal is 100% correlated to the work that you didn't do on the front end. And I'd much rather you shift that energy from the back end and the pressure of like, I gotta get this deal, I gotta get them to a yes, to shifting all of that energy to the front end of the call and saying, how do I better prepare? What intelligence can I gather in my research prior to meeting with this person? What information can I gather when they're booking an appointment with me so that I'm going into this call with a lot more information? I can think about what questions I want to ask. I want to think about how I want to navigate that call. And we call that your sales call roadmap. Right? And so that is one of my favorite tools to use. I still use it 15 years into doing this because I know that if I do the work on the front end, it's going to make it a whole lot easier for me to maintain control on that call. It's going to keep the emotion out. I'm not going to be desperate to try to like close them. And because I'm not going to be emotional on that call, it allows me to be a lot more effective on the call. And so if you don't have a sales call roadmap, I highly suggest that you click the link below in the description and I give you the template that I use with my clients. Obviously for them, I customize it, but for you, it is a great starting place to say, how can I be better prepared for my calls? How can I have a template that's going to keep me on track where I'm thinking about the questions that I want to ask in advance so I don't have all of this pressure to try to figure out what to do in real time. The third common mistake that I see that people make is not connecting their solution back to the problems that the prospect has shared. Right? Again, had to check my notes because there are so many things that I want to like put into this video and common mistakes, but I'll probably need like a part 2, part 3, part 4, right? We could do a whole series on this. But for this video, the third most common mistake is not connecting the solution that you offer back to the problems that they shared. Right? And this, every time I see this on this call, it like really frustrates me because we've asked these people, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets. Tell me your challenges. Tell me your goals. Tell me your gaps. Tell me your budget. Tell me how you're going to make a decision. Like, tell me all of this information. And then I see people then get to their solution and they're not leveraging the information that they've gathered. You have to leverage that information. So, Mrs. Prospect, I understand that you mentioned X. This is how we address that within our program, or this is how our solution addresses this. This is how our software addresses this. This is how we're going to eliminate this with our services or with our product or with our coaching or whatever it is that you offer. You need to connect it back. The other reason that you want to connect it back is that it reduces the amount of mental energy that your prospect has to use trying to figure out if your solution is going to solve their problem. We don't want people to have to think, right? And I know that sounds kind of funny, but if I have to try to figure out if this is the right solution, if I have to try to figure out if this is going to solve my problem, if I have to try to figure out if this is going to help me get to the payoff, I'm not going to use that much mental energy. You need to tell me This is how this is going to solve the problem. This is how we're going to get you to the payoff. This is how we're going to address those roadblocks. This is how we're going to eliminate that issue that's been keeping you from being able to get that result that it is that you're looking for. And it has to be crystal clear. At the end of the conversation, you want it to be a no-brainer. You don't want them to have to ask, well, how's it going to fix this? Or is that really going to get me to my the destination or the goal that I'm trying to get to? It should be a definitive, oh, yes, that makes sense. And so you have to make sure that you are connecting the dots for them so they're not having to use mental energy to try to figure out if that is the right solution and if it is what they in fact need. All right, so I know that was a lot and we've only scratched the surface, but I want to do a brief recap. Number one is that you want to make sure that you are talking less and that they are talking more. Number two is that you want to make sure that you have a repeatable sales process that you can follow so that you are not winging it on a sales call, especially when you're working high ticket, high value deals. Like you need a kind of press and play, kind of a repeatable process to follow. And then thirdly, you want to make sure that you are connecting the dots and really leveraging the information that you're gathering in the discovery phase and connecting that back and showing how your solution will solve that problem for them and or help them achieve the payoff that they're looking for. And once more, if you need help on figuring out like, how do I stay in control of that process, or what does that process even look like, I highly suggest that you download the sales call roadmap. It is a template that I use when I am doing my coaching and consulting calls with prospects. And it is also the very first thing that I give clients because it changes the game. When you have a roadmap for what it is that you need to do before, during, and after the call, it increases the chances of success. And we want to take that energy that we're putting on the back end, trying to get the deal over the finish line, shift it to the front end so we can be a lot more prepared on the front end and close easy on the back end. Would love to know what was your biggest takeaway from the video. So drop that in the comments and also let me know, are there any other topics that you would love to hear? All right, see you later.